Today I want to talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but ignoring it is even more dangerous than thinking about it. The truth is simple. Financial cycles are real. Markets rise, markets fall, and sometimes they fall harder than anyone expects. Whether it happens in 2026, 2027, or beyond is not the point. The point is that history has already shown us one undeniable fact. Those who prepare before uncertainty arrives are the ones who stay protected when others panic. Right now, many people are sitting in what feels like safe comfort. Money in one place, savings exposed to inflation, investments concentrated in one type of asset. And the biggest mistake? Believing that what worked in the past will always work in the future. But wealth is not just about growth. Wealth is about protection. So instead of reacting when a crisis arrives, the smarter approach is to think ahead and ask, if a major downturn happens, where would my money be safest? There are three categories of investments that historically tend to be more resilient during major market shocks, not because they are magical, but because they serve essential roles in the global financial system. The first is liquidity and cash equivalent safety. In times of crisis, people underestimate the power of simply having access to cash or highly liquid assets. When markets fall sharply, opportunities appear, but only for those who have dry powder ready. Liquidity gives you options. It prevents forced selling. It gives you breathing room when others are trapped. Think of it this way. During a storm, the strongest position is not being fully exposed outside. It's having shelter and resources ready. Cash-like stability, such as money market funds or short-term government-backed instruments in many systems, acts as that shelter. It is not about chasing high returns. It is about staying flexible when everything else becomes unpredictable. The second category is defensive real-world value assets. Throughout history, certain assets tend to hold their relevance because they are tied to physical or essential demand. These are not driven purely by speculation. They are supported by necessity. Things like essential infrastructure, energy-related assets, utilities, and basic consumer needs often remain in demand, even during downturns. Why? Because no matter what happens in the economy, people still need electricity, water, food systems, and transportation networks. Companies or assets connected to these essential services tend to experience less extreme volatility compared to high-risk speculative sectors. This doesn't mean they never fall, they do, but they often recover more steadily because their underlying demand does not disappear when sentiment turns negative. In uncertain times, stability often comes from what society cannot function without. The third category is historically defensive stores of value. When fear enters markets, investors often look for places where value has been preserved across generations. These assets are not necessarily about rapid growth. They are about long-term trust and scarcity. Across different eras, people have turned to certain stores of value during instability. The reason is psychological as much as financial. When confidence in growth declines, confidence shifts toward preservation. The key idea here is not to chase hype or short-term trends, but to recognize what tends to remain relevant even when financial systems are stressed. These assets often behave differently from stocks and speculative markets, which can make them useful as part of a broader risk-balancing strategy. Now, an important point must be made clearly. None of this is about predicting an exact crash date. No one can reliably time the market with precision. Anyone who claims certainty about when a crash will happen is oversimplifying something that is deeply complex. Instead, the real strategy is preparedness. Because financial history is not a straight line, it is a cycle of expansion, excess, correction, and recovery. And in every cycle, the people who suffer the most are not those who invested, but those who were unprepared for volatility. So what does moving your money actually mean in a responsible sense? It does not mean panic. It does not mean abandoning all investments. And it definitely does not mean reacting emotionally to fear-based predictions. It means reviewing your exposure. It means asking difficult questions. Am I overexposed to one sector? Do I have liquidity if opportunities appear? Do I own anything that can stabilize my portfolio during volatility? Am I relying too heavily on constant market growth? Because real financial strength is not built on excitement, it is built on balance. If a major downturn comes, the people who will feel it the most are those who ignored risk completely. But the people who will benefit from it are those who prepared calmly while others were distracted. And that is the real message here. Not fear, not panic, not prediction, but awareness. Because in every financial era, wealth is not just created by knowing when to invest. It is protected by knowing when to be cautious, when to diversify, and when to step back and reassess. So instead of asking, will there be a crash in 2026? A better question is, if uncertainty arrives tomorrow, where does my money stand today? And once you can answer that honestly, you are already ahead of most people in the system. Because in the end, the goal is not just to grow wealth. The goal is to keep it. Financial markets naturally move in cycles, and this is one of the most important truths for anyone trying to build long-term wealth. Every economy, no matter how strong or advanced it seems, goes through phases of expansion and contraction. These phases are not random. They are part of how financial systems adjust, grow, and correct themselves over time. When people understand this cycle clearly, they stop reacting emotionally to market movements and start thinking more strategically about their money. In the expansion phase, everything usually looks positive. Businesses grow, employment increases, consumer spending rises, and investment opportunities seem abundant. During these periods, confidence builds across the market. People feel optimistic, sometimes even overly optimistic, and this often leads to higher risk-taking. Assets can become overpriced because demand keeps increasing, not always because their true value has changed, but because more people are trying to participate in the growth. This stage can last for years, and it often convinces people that stability and constant growth are the normal state of the economy. However, no expansion continues forever. As growth stretches too far, imbalances begin to form. Prices of assets may rise faster than their actual earnings or productivity. Debt levels can increase as individuals, companies, and even governments borrow more to take advantage of the positive environment. At some point, the system becomes sensitive to change. Even a small trigger, such as rising interest rates, inflation pressure, geopolitical tension, or a slowdown in consumer demand, can start to shift sentiment. What was once confidence can quickly turn into uncertainty. This is where the contraction phase begins. Markets start to correct themselves, and asset prices may fall as expectations adjust to reality. Businesses that were overextended may struggle. Investors who entered the market late or with high-risk exposure often experience losses. This phase feels uncomfortable because it challenges the belief that growth is continuous, but in reality, it is a necessary part of the cycle. It removes excess, reduces imbalance, and resets valuations so that the next phase of growth can begin on a more stable foundation. What makes this cycle especially important is not just its existence, but the emotional behavior it creates. During expansion, people tend to feel fear of missing out, which leads to rushed decisions and overconfidence. During contraction, the same people often feel fear of loss, which leads to panic selling and hesitation. Both reactions are driven more by emotion than logic. This is why many investors end up buying when prices are high and selling when prices are low, which is the opposite of what builds long-term wealth. Understanding market cycles helps break this emotional pattern. It teaches that downturns are not permanent failures, but natural phases of adjustment. It also shows that upswings are not guaranteed to last forever, no matter how strong they feel in the moment. When someone accepts this reality, they begin to focus less on timing the market perfectly and more on preparing for different conditions. Instead of trying to guess when the next rise or fall will happen, they focus on staying stable through both. This perspective also changes how risk is viewed. Risk is no longer something to fear only during crashes. It is something that exists in every phase of the cycle. In booming markets, the risk of overexposure increases. In declining markets, the risk of poor decisions increases. Recognizing this helps create a more balanced approach, where decisions are based on awareness rather than excitement or fear. Ultimately, understanding that financial markets move in cycles gives people a long-term mindset. It reduces emotional stress, improves decision-making, and encourages patience. It reminds investors that both good and bad periods are temporary, and that success is not about avoiding cycles, but about navigating them wisely over time. Liquidity and cash equivalent safety play a critical role in financial stability, especially during uncertain or volatile market conditions. At its core, liquidity refers to how quickly and easily an asset can be converted into usable cash without significant loss in value. This concept becomes extremely important when markets become unstable because in those moments, not all assets behave the same way. Some may lose value rapidly, while others may become difficult to sell at all. Having liquid assets ensures that a person remains flexible, prepared, and in control, regardless of what is happening in the broader economy. One of the biggest advantages of holding liquidity is the ability to respond quickly to changing situations. Financial markets do not move in predictable straight lines, and opportunities often appear unexpectedly during downturns. When prices of quality assets drop due to panic or fear in the market, those with available cash are in a position to take advantage. They can purchase valuable investments at discounted prices while others may be forced to sell due to lack of funds. This creates a clear strategic advantage. Liquidity, in this sense, is not just about safety, but also about opportunity. Another important aspect is protection against forced selling. When individuals are heavily invested in non-liquid or highly volatile assets and suddenly need money for emergencies, they may have no choice but to sell those assets at a loss. This is one of the most common reasons people experience financial setbacks during crises. However, When a portion of wealth is kept in liquid or cash equivalent form, it acts as a buffer. It allows essential expenses to be covered without disrupting long-term investments. This separation between emergency funds and growth investments helps prevent emotional decision-making during stressful times. Cash equivalent instruments, such as money market funds or short-term government-backed securities in many financial systems, are often considered part of this liquidity strategy. These instruments are typically designed to maintain stable value while still offering modest returns compared to traditional savings accounts. While they may not provide high growth, their purpose is different. They are meant to preserve capital and ensure access to funds when needed. In uncertain markets, this stability becomes more valuable than chasing higher returns that come with higher risk. Liquidity also plays a psychological role in financial decision-making. When people know they have accessible funds available, they tend to feel more secure and less pressured by market fluctuations. This reduces emotional reactions, such as panic selling during downturns or impulsive buying during hype-driven rallies. Instead of reacting to fear, they can make measured decisions based on logic and timing. This emotional stability is often underestimated, but it is one of the most important factors in long-term financial success. Additionally, liquidity acts as a form of financial flexibility. Life events are unpredictable. Job changes, medical emergencies, business opportunities, or sudden market shifts can all require immediate access to money. Without liquidity, individuals may find themselves locked into positions that are difficult to exit. With liquidity, they maintain the freedom to adapt. This adaptability is essential in both personal finance and investment strategy because it ensures that long-term plans are not disrupted by short-term shocks. It is also important to understand that liquidity does not mean keeping all wealth idle. Rather, it is about balance. Excessive liquidity may lead to missed growth opportunities, while too little liquidity increases vulnerability during crises. A well-structured financial plan includes both growth-oriented investments and a safe portion of liquid assets. This balance allows individuals to participate in long-term wealth building while still being protected against unexpected downturns. In essence, liquidity is the foundation of financial resilience. It ensures survival during difficult periods, enables strategic action during market dislocations, and provides peace of mind in uncertain environments. Without it, even strong portfolios can become fragile when conditions change quickly. Defensive real-world assets are often considered a stabilizing force in an investment portfolio because they are tied to essential functions that people rely on regardless of economic conditions. Unlike speculative assets that depend heavily on market sentiment, hype, or rapid growth expectations, these assets are grounded in everyday necessity. Their value is supported by consistent demand, which tends to remain relatively stable even when the broader economy experiences stress or contraction. One of the key reasons these assets provide stability is that they are connected to basic human needs and infrastructure. No matter how uncertain the financial environment becomes, people still require electricity, water, transportation, communication, and access to food. Businesses and systems that deliver these services continue to operate because society depends on them to function. This underlying demand creates a level of resilience that is often missing in sectors driven primarily by discretionary spending or speculative interest. For example, utility-related services are typically less sensitive to economic downturns because they provide essential resources. Even if individuals reduce spending on luxury goods or entertainment during a recession, they cannot simply stop using electricity or water. This creates a more predictable flow of revenue for companies operating in these areas, which in turn can reduce the level of volatility experienced by their associated investments. While their growth may not be rapid, their consistency can be valuable during uncertain times. Another important factor is the role of infrastructure. Roads, energy systems, supply chains, and communication networks form the backbone of modern economies. These systems are not easily replaced or abandoned, and they often require long-term investment and maintenance. Because of this, assets tied to infrastructure tend to have enduring relevance. Governments and large institutions frequently support or regulate these sectors to ensure continuity, which can further enhance their stability compared to more loosely structured markets. Defensive real-world assets also benefit from their tangible nature. Unlike purely digital or abstract financial instruments, these assets are connected to physical systems or services that can be observed and measured. This tangibility can make them less vulnerable to extreme swings driven purely by sentiment. While their market prices can still fluctuate, their underlying purpose remains intact, providing a foundation of intrinsic value that supports long-term confidence. It is also important to consider how these assets behave during periods of market correction. While they are not immune to declines, they often experience less severe drops compared to high-growth or speculative sectors. This is partly because investors tend to shift their focus towards stability when uncertainty increases. As risk appetite decreases, capital often flows into areas perceived as safer or more reliable. This shift can help cushion the impact of broader market downturns on these types of assets. Additionally, many defensive assets are associated with steady income generation rather than rapid appreciation. This income-focused characteristic can be particularly valuable during volatile periods as it provides a more predictable return stream even when market prices fluctuate. For investors seeking to preserve wealth rather than aggressively grow it during uncertain times, this consistency can play an important role in maintaining financial balance. However, it is essential to understand that defensive does not mean risk-free. These assets can still be affected by economic pressures, regulatory changes, or shifts in demand over time. The key difference is that their core function remains necessary, which often allows them to recover more steadily compared to assets that rely heavily on optimism and rapid expansion. By including defensive real-world assets in a broader financial strategy, individuals can create a layer of protection against extreme volatility. These assets act as an anchor, helping to balance out more aggressive investments and reduce overall portfolio risk. Their strength lies not in delivering explosive returns, but in providing reliability and continuity when market conditions become uncertain and unpredictable. Stores of value have played a crucial role in preserving wealth across different periods of economic uncertainty, and their importance becomes more noticeable when confidence in traditional financial systems begins to weaken. These assets are not primarily chosen for rapid growth or high returns in short periods. Instead, they are valued for their ability to maintain purchasing power over time, even when currencies fluctuate, markets decline, or economic conditions become unstable. One of the defining characteristics of a strong store of value is scarcity. Assets that are limited in supply tend to hold their worth better because they cannot be easily created or inflated. When something is scarce, its value is less likely to be diluted over time, especially in environments where money supply increases or inflation rises. This scarcity creates a form of natural protection, as the asset's availability remains relatively constant while demand may increase during uncertain periods. Another important factor is trust. Stores of value are often built on long-standing collective belief in their ability to preserve wealth. This trust is not developed overnight. It is formed over generations of use, observation, and experience. When people face uncertainty, they tend to move toward assets that have historically demonstrated resilience. This behavior is driven by both logic and psychology. In times of doubt, individuals and institutions look for stability in what has consistently worked in the past, rather than experimenting with unproven options. These assets also tend to have a low correlation with more volatile financial markets. This means that when stocks or high-risk investments decline sharply, stores of value may not follow the same pattern. In some cases, they may even increase in demand as investors seek safety. This difference in behavior makes them useful as a balancing component within a broader portfolio. By not moving in the same direction as riskier assets, they can help reduce overall volatility and protect against significant losses. Another reason stores of value are important is their role during inflationary periods. When the purchasing power of currency decreases, holding cash alone can gradually erode wealth. In such situations, assets that retain intrinsic value become more attractive because they provide a way to preserve buying power. Instead of watching money lose value over time, individuals can shift a portion of their wealth into assets that are less affected by currency depreciation. This strategy is not about avoiding all risk, but about reducing exposure to one specific type of financial erosion. The psychological impact of owning stores of value should not be overlooked either. During periods of market instability, fear and uncertainty can influence decision-making in powerful ways. Investors who lack a sense of security may react impulsively, selling assets at the wrong time or avoiding opportunities altogether. Having a portion of wealth allocated to stable, trusted assets can create a sense of confidence. This confidence allows for more rational decision-making, even when external conditions are uncertain. It is also important to recognize that stores of value are not designed to outperform high-growth investments during strong economic expansions. In booming markets, they may appear less attractive because their returns are often slower and more stable. However, their true strength becomes visible when conditions change. When growth slows, volatility increases, or risk becomes more apparent, these assets often serve as a form of financial insurance, helping to protect wealth when other areas of a portfolio may be under pressure. Ultimately, the role of stores of value is not to replace growth-oriented investments, but to complement them. They provide a layer of protection that supports long-term financial stability. By maintaining value across different economic conditions, they help ensure that wealth is not only built, but also preserved through periods of uncertainty and change. Risk management is often misunderstood because many people associate it only with avoiding losses during market crashes. In reality, it is a continuous process that applies to every phase of the financial cycle, not just periods of decline. It is about structuring decisions in a way that balances potential reward with the possibility of loss, ensuring that no single event can severely damage overall financial stability. Rather than reacting to fear-driven predictions, effective risk management focuses on preparation, awareness, and disciplined decision-making. One of the core principles of managing risk is diversification. Relying too heavily on a single type of investment, sector, or strategy can create vulnerability. If that one area underperforms, the entire portfolio can suffer. By spreading investments across different asset types, industries, or even geographic regions, the impact of any one negative event can be reduced. This does not eliminate risk, but it distributes it in a way that makes outcomes more stable over time. Diversification acts as a form of protection against the unpredictability of markets. Another important aspect is understanding personal exposure. Many individuals take on more risk than they realize, especially during strong market conditions. When everything is rising, it becomes easy to assume that the trend will continue indefinitely. This can lead to overconfidence and increased exposure to volatile or speculative assets. Risk management involves regularly reviewing positions and asking whether the current allocation aligns with long-term goals and tolerance for loss. It requires honest evaluation rather than relying on optimism. Liquidity also plays a role in risk control. Without accessible funds, even well-planned investments can become problematic during unexpected situations. A lack of liquidity can force individuals to sell assets at unfavorable prices, turning temporary market declines into permanent losses. Maintaining a portion of assets in liquid form ensures that short-term needs can be met without disrupting long-term strategies. This balance between invested capital and accessible funds is essential for maintaining control during uncertain periods. Emotional discipline is another critical component. Markets are influenced not only by data and fundamentals, but also by human behavior. Fear and greed often drive extreme movements, and individuals who react impulsively to these emotions tend to make poor decisions. Panic selling during downturns or chasing rapid gains during market highs can lead to significant losses. Risk management involves setting clear guidelines and sticking to them, even when emotions are strong. This might include predefined limits, long-term planning, or simply resisting the urge to act without careful consideration. It is also important to recognize that avoiding all risk is neither possible nor beneficial. Growth inherently requires some level of risk, and completely avoiding it can limit financial progress. The goal is not to eliminate risk, but to take calculated risks that align with one's financial objectives. This means accepting that losses can occur, but ensuring that they are manageable and do not threaten overall financial security. A well-managed approach allows for participation in growth opportunities while maintaining protection against major setbacks. Additionally, risk management includes preparing for scenarios that may not seem likely in the present moment. Economic shifts, policy changes, or unexpected global events can all impact financial markets in significant ways. While it is impossible to predict every outcome, building a resilient strategy that can withstand different conditions is more effective than trying to forecast specific events. This approach shifts the focus from prediction to preparedness, which is far more reliable over the long term. Ultimately, managing risk is about maintaining balance. It requires awareness of both opportunity and vulnerability, and the discipline to act thoughtfully rather than react emotionally. By focusing on structure, diversification, liquidity, and long-term planning, individuals can navigate uncertainty with greater confidence. Instead of being driven by fear of a potential crash, they position themselves to remain stable regardless of what the market does next.